Thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. I want to welcome to the show Nyxx, the Goddess of the Night. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thank you for, like I said before, taking your time out of your day for doing this. And I just want to talk a little bit about your wrestling career, in
Okay.
which I've become quite a fan of in the last couple months.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So, if you don't mind going all the way to the beginning,
Okay.
what was it like? How did you get interested in professional wrestling?
I've loved wrestling my whole life.
Yeah,
I have two older brothers, and they used to, watch it all the time. And they they actually practiced all of their moves on me. You know how they say like, "Don't try this at home." They didn't start putting that up there until after my brothers had already started. So, um, I was like their crash test dummy, and I loved it. I lived for it. So, like growing up, I always loved it. And then, I got older. I had children, and then I kind of given up on the whole dream of becoming a professional wrestler
right.
because most people start when they're like 16 or 18. Um, but I didn't. I'm 27. I started. My first match was. It'll be 2 years in June. So um, I gave up on it, and then 2020 rolled around. January 2020, the Royal Rumble happens, and Edge makes his return. And I was like, man, if Edge can come back from a broken neck and a forced retirement, I can wrestle after having two children. So that's kind of where the journey started for me. I went to my first training right before COVID shut everything down. Um, and I fell in love, and the rest has just kind of been history, you know?
That was an exciting moment, right? Edge's return.
Oh my God, I cried. I'm not even gonna lie. I definitely cried.
Well, I sat there watching it. The Royal Rumble is actually like the one show of the year that my wife will sit and watch with me.
Oh, wow.
and
Well,
and
nice.
the funny part about it is she is not a wrestling fan. I mean, I think she stopped in the 1990s.
Oh,
So
wow.
I jumped
That's a
off my
lot.
couch as soon as his music hit. She had no idea.
Hmm.
She had no idea what was going on or who he was.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it
I
was.
still get, I'll still go back and like watch it and get like goosebumps up my arm every time I hear his music hit because that moment was so monumental for like wrestling fans that watched him retire.
Yeah,
Hearing his music and seeing him, run out of the smoke and the look on his face when he was soaking it in, it was
the emotion that
magical.
he had on his
Yeah.
face. Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we go on, I just want to say that this year's entrance for WrestleMania, I thought was such a great entrance that he made. The stage setup, him coming out to
Yes.
Slayer,
Yes.
it was awesome.
Absolutely. I popped for sure.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. So, who are some of your influences as a child outside of your brothers on the screen?
Um, so Lita, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Of course, like Trish Stratus, but for I always say like Trish Stratus was more of like I don't want to say the pretty girl because that kind of dumbs down the work that she put in, and that's not what I'm trying to
right.
do. But Lita was more like grungy, more of like the outcast. That was more my taste. And then of course, like I love jazz.
Hmm.
Mickey James, I adore her,
She's great.
especially when she went through the whole like psycho I'm in love with Trish Stratus thing. I was so here for that. Um, so yeah, I would probably say that those are like the top three people whose matches I'll go back and study a lot.
Right.
Um, those are probably the three that I watch the most.
I saw that you trained at was it APW school?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love them so much. So going back to the beginning, it took me a really long time to find a place to train.
Hmm.
Like when I started in 2020, I had been looking for months. It wasn't the first time I'd looked up schools, but when I looked up schools as a kid and I see like $3,000, $4,000, I'm not gonna ask my parents for that. So when I became an adult and I started looking, I didn't realize how difficult it would be because I was looking up all these, promotions and sending all these emails, text messages, calling, leaving voicemails, just all kinds of stuff. And I ran into the same messages every time. They either didn't train new people or they would not train a woman. Um, and that was extremely frustrating to come across. Um, but some people still believe that women in the ring aren't credible. so they just won't train a female wrestler. So I found a place in Greenville, Mississippi. It's Alpha Wrestling Association now, but it was North Delta Championship Wrestling when I first found them.
Okay.
So that was the first place that I trained at, but it was 3 hours from where I am. And at the time, they only trained like once a month, I think, whenever they ran shows. So after COVID had shut everything down and then things started opening back up, I was trying to find a place that was closer to me, but also trained more often, because I can't train once a month if I'm trying to be, great. So
Right.
I reached out to a guy that I met at North Delta. His name is Gio Savage, and Gio is phenomenal. He is great. And I asked him, I was like, hey, dude, do you know anywhere that will train a new female wrestler? Like female specifically, because people will train new people, but I'm a chick, and apparently that's a problem. And he told me about All Pro Wrestling in Marianna, Arkansas. And at the time, they didn't have any women at all. I was the first woman on their roster. So he was like, the owner's name is Ricky Kennedy. Reach out to him on Facebook. See if he'll have you out. I'm sure he will, but just like talk to him. So I reached out to Ricky. He invited me out to a show, and the instant I stepped foot inside the door during that show, I fell in love with that entire company. The crowd is great, the matches are great, the locker room is amazing. So I talked to Ricky and Matthew Banks. He goes by Buck Skinner in the ring. I talked to them after the show, and they invited me to a training, and I've been with them ever since. That's my home company. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Was that your first experience at discovering independent wrestling?
I think so. Yeah. Now that I think about it, I think that was my first indie show. I'd never been to an indie show before.
It's a lot to soak in.
It is so much so people think that if it's not like, and I'm gonna be honest, I was that person too, where I thought that if it wasn't on like the WWE scale, it just wouldn't be as entertaining. That was, oh my gosh, I was so wrong. I was so emotionally invested the moment I stepped foot in that show. I was like, wow, this is great. This is amazing. And then that allowed me to, they allowed me to be a fan for a second and kind of soak it in as a fan on the indie scene, and then jump to the other side of it. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It was a cool experience. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot. I mean, I've always considered the independents like the backbone of the wrestling industry.
They are.
It's
They really are.
such an important part, and people don't realize it. I always try to get people to go to independent shows, or at least up here. People I work with. I work with several different organizations, and I always recommend, come on down. People that watch like WWE and AEW, it's like, come on down.
Yeah.
You'll see a lot of guys, that you won't see on TV, but you're gonna have a lot of fun. I guarantee it. Mm-hmm. And it's about a quarter of the cost of a WWE ticket. So,
it's right.
So
if that, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know. The last time Raw was in here, I think it was $70 for like minimum, the cheapest seats, if I remember. And I'm not about that, So
the way my pockets are set up, indie wrestlers do not really make that much.
Oh yeah, trust me, I know. I know I've gotten. The most I've made was probably 150 for one show doing working a camera.
Right.
So I got lucky that day, I guess. Yeah. So that's kind of a lot. So, So what was your initial thoughts actually going into training, and did you want to stick with it? Obviously, you stuck with it. Was it like a shocking experience getting into training?
For me, it was. Of course, I was terrified going because I didn't know what to expect my first training. But it also came for me. It came pretty naturally. Mm-hmm. Not to be like, oh yeah, I've been great at this. I was what a lot of vets call the drizzling shits, in my opinion. Starting off, excuse my language, but that's how they put it.
It's encouraged. Swearing is encouraged.
just a little, sentence seasoning. But it came naturally, but I think it came naturally because I had my own at-home training with my brothers.
Right.
So I was kind of used to certain things. Now, there are some things that, of course, I had to learn, like making sure I know how to lock up properly, making sure I know how to give a body slam when I'm supposed to so I don't kill my opponent. Just like simple things like that. A lot of it was safety, but it came, I felt like I was at home in the ring. And I've worked a lot of different jobs, but this was the first time career-wise where I did something and it felt like I was supposed to be doing it.
What I saw on your social media, you won the Alpha Women's Championship recently.
The first ever Alpha Wrestling Association's women's champion.
So that I actually could not find the matches, but tell me more about that and how that. Obviously, you mentioned that earlier in the episode. So how did that all come about?
So they actually hadn't had a women's match ever before I want to say it was February.
Okay.
January. I think it was late January. Which I didn't know at the time when they booked me and the girl that I worked. So we do the match, I go over, and the owner, he comes up, he's like, I have a little trivia for you. I was like, I don't like questions. I don't like that. He was like, no, this is gonna be pretty easy. He was like, who's the first ever winner of the first ever Alpha Wrestling Association women's match? And I was like, Nyxx? He was like, yep, ding, ding, ding. I was like, what? That's crazy. So he talked about how he wants to like build up the women's division and he wants to get a women's championship. I was actually supposed to win the championship that day, but the belt wasn't ready. It wasn't there. I was like, man, really want that belt. And he showed me a picture of it. And I was like, oh, she has to be mine. She's beautiful. I love her. And then the very next show, they announced that the belt was on the line. And I won it. And it was my first championship win ever. So that moment was pretty big for me. I cried in the back, not gonna lie. Definitely shed some tears because it felt like all the work that I had been putting forth since I started just kind of like came to a head.
Right. Wrestling fans, promoters, wrestlers, and anyone who enjoys pro wrestling now have something new to be excited about. The Wrestling Fans International Association, the WFIA, is back. WFIA is an association that exists to promote, grow, and support professional wrestling throughout the world. Membership is free. Your membership includes a free digital bi-monthly publication of the Wrestling Fan News newsletter, association updates, voting privileges, and much more. Please go to thewfia.org, that's THEWFIA.org, and become a member today.
But what I was saying was it says a lot about how a promotion views you when they feel like you're ready to be their champion. Like to even be put in the running to be their first ever women's champion was a big deal for me.
Yep.
So when I won it, I was like, wow, that's crazy. And then I want to say a couple of weeks later, I won the Memphis Wrestling Women's Championship.
Yep,
so I won my first 2 championships within like a month of each other.
That's amazing. It really is.
It was pretty awesome.
Yeah. So I watched that on TV, the title win.
Whoops.
There's some shenanigans.
Whoops. Just like a little, not too much.
Mackenzie Morgan up instead. This is a match going on though.
Oh, wait a minute.
They want to fight Matt and
Justin,
Storybook.
Look at this. Look. Nyxx has got the chair. No!
Oh my
God!
goodness!
Nyxx just struck MKC with a chair.
And Cassandra!
Cassandra!
DDT on the chair! I can't believe.
Here is your winner and new Memphis Wrestling Women's Champion, the Goddess of the Night, Nyxx!
Fans, we just crowned a brand new Memphis Wrestling Women's Champion, but I don't think that's the news here.
Oh my God, Dustin.
Nyxx has just taken out both Mackenzie Morgan and Cassandra Golden with a steel chair on behalf of Ellsworth Enterprise.
I don't believe it.
Fans, we're out of time.
Somebody needs to check on Cassandra and Mackenzie. This is disgusting.
I'm Dustin, he's Terrence. See you next week. What in the hell just happened?
I'm going to tell you honestly, I loved it. I was excited, but
Me too.
tell me how that all came about. I mean, you turned your back on, was it Mackenzie Morgan?
And Mackenzie Morgan and Cassandra Golden.
Yep. Yep.
Two besties. Oops.
I know you're posting pictures all over Instagram with these two, and you're all lovey-dovey on their page, the Memphis Wrestling page, and then it's out of nowhere. Like, what's going on?
So here's the whole thing with that. Nyxx has been in Memphis Wrestling for quite some time. Not quite some time, but like a year now.
Mm-hmm.
And the only 2 times that I've ever had a championship match was a triple threat and a fatal 4-way. Never had a one-on-one, never had a number 1 contenders match, none of that. So being a face wasn't really working out the way that I needed it to work out. And I kept seeing bad guys win. You know, Dirty Diana Taylor had the belt for a while. And I was like, she was dirty and she got the belt. It worked out for her. So far, it's working out for me. So, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's only been basically a few weeks, right? Basically maybe a month or so. What's it like being the champion there? What's it like working Memphis Wrestling? I mean, obviously Memphis might be a little young, I don't know, but might be a little young, I'm not sure, but Memphis has a historic, you know, like it's just an intense history, Memphis as a whole in the wrestling business. And when I found out this company was coming up and stuff like that, I was excited because I've always loved Memphis Wrestling. I used to watch the TV, like I said, all the way up here in Connecticut in the 1980s and 90s. I would get Memphis TV. And I really like this promotion a lot. Memphis Wrestling, I think, was Dustin Starr's doing a great job. And so what's it like working there and given the ball, basically?
So Memphis Wrestling, first of all, it's different because like working a house show and then working a show that's for TV, it's like 2 different ball games. So there are certain things that you have to be conscious of while you're in the ring for a TV show as opposed to like a house show.
Okay.
Because the house show, all you have to do is worry about the people that are there. But with a show, like a TV show, you have to worry about the people that are there and also try to suck in the people that are at home too. So it's actually a lot of pressure. It's a lot more pressure. But it's fun though. It's especially and even though I turned on Cassandra and Mackenzie Morgan, the competitors that we have in the women's division are phenomenal to me. And there are not very many of us, but we try to put on the best show possible every time we come out. So, and that's another thing, like when it comes to like the history of Memphis Wrestling, like, yeah, there's a lot of history for Memphis Wrestling, but as women, we're trying to kind of create our own history in Memphis Wrestling so that like 30, 40 years from now, people look back and be like, oh, snap, the women's division back in 2020, whatever was, you know.
Professional wrestling has changed as a whole, really, including, you know, like I don't ever remember a women's division in Memphis unless, you know, it was something really brief. But how important do you think that is? Like, and how important do you think all you ladies are to that, you know, to bring in that? Because, I mean, was it the last 10, 15 years, women's wrestling has pretty much exploded. And and I mean, the talent is definitely different than it was in, say, I was growing up, you know, it's the women are, I think, better at what they do nowadays. You know what I mean? It's just amazing to watch. And
I think people are, because it's not like women back in the day couldn't wrestle. It's just that back then people didn't really take women's wrestling seriously. Women had commercial break matches, not break matches. We had like bra and panties matches. And you know, wrestling in a pool full of gravy. Nobody really took it seriously, you know. And while that's all fine and grand, it was entertaining for that time period. I feel like as now women are, you know, people are finally starting to take us seriously. Like in the WWE, women are having elimination chamber matches and ladder matches and Hell in a Cell matches. Like people are taking us seriously. And we're trying to prove that we can with the guys, you know, we can keep up. And we wear cute outfits when we do it. So, you know, we make it work. It's just it's frustrating. It was frustrating for me when I was looking for a place to train because the women's evolution, the pay-per-view that was just all women, that had already happened. So it's like women have already shown that they're credible in the ring. So why am I still having to fight for my place in the ring? You know?
Right.
But some people still have that old school mentality. Women should, be barefoot and pregnant, stay in the kitchen. I like to fight men for a living. So
I was going to talk to you about that. I've seen that you do have some intergender matches under your belt as well. I'm not a huge. I've made it pretty well known I'm not an intergender fan. I mean, that's fine. It has its audience. I am a traditional wrestling fan,
Yeah.
But if that's something that happens, and I just wrestling is a variety show. There's wrestling for every kind of fan. You could sit there and watch death matches. You can watch intergender, whatever. That's just not my cup of tea. But how do you feel How do you feel about the intergender matches and their place in professional wrestling?
I didn't feel any kind of way about it because my first 6 months in the ring, I was fighting nothing but men because I was the only woman on my roster. Now, of course, I wasn't fighting like big 6'4", 240-pound men because that makes absolutely zero sense.
Right.
But hi, baby. I used that first 6 months to kind of prove myself in a way.
That's understandable.
And granted, I started having not way more fun fighting women, but fighting men those first 6 months was in a way me trying to pay my dues and kind of prove that I was supposed to be there. And once I got done with that, now I've just been fighting mostly women. Occasionally I'll have an intergender match, but it's mostly tag matches.
Okay.
So it's like me and a guy versus another girl and another guy. So I still have that, female to female interaction, male to male interaction. I don't really think I've had very many intergender singles matches since I've started having matches with women.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Read about the Northern Wrestling Federation in the book presented by Russellville.com, The Pro Wrestling Vault, Volume 2. Hear the story of Roger Ruffin, the man who trained Carl Anderson, the Monster Abyss, Jordan Clearwater, Chris Harris, and Jillian Hall.
Plus 45 other short stories, including Jazz, Bobby Eaton, Kamala, Thunder Rosa, Mario Mancini, Scott Casey, PJ Black, Kerry Morton, Sal Renaro, Jeremiah Plunkett, Colby Carino, Bam Bam Malone, and many others.
Get your book today at Russellville.com. Russellville. It's where wrestling lives.
Let's see here. If you don't mind, I want to talk to you about being paired up with James Ellsworth in Memphis Wrestling. What's up with that? He was actually a former guest on this podcast about 2 years ago. He's a interesting individual.
He is interesting. That is the perfect way of putting that. James Ellsworth is very interesting. He's something else. That's really, I don't really know how else to put that. James Ellsworth is in a world of his own. I didn't expect. Oh goodness gracious, are you okay? I didn't expect to work with him.
Okay.
When they said that they were bringing him, I didn't know that he would be working with the women's division until he started calling out the women's division, and I was like, whoa. Okay. All right, you worked with Carmella. I could see this happening. That makes sense. And then it got to the point where they were like, yeah, so, you're about to start working with Ellsworth like directly. I was like, oh, okay. If that's the character you want me to play, absolutely, I'll do that. That's fine. I'm here to tell a story. So far it's been pretty cool though. We've had some interesting moments. I got to pants James Ellsworth on TV. So I guess that makes me a little famous. Ask for my autograph, I guess. But yeah, it's been pretty cool.
So you enjoy working Memphis Wrestling. There's other indies that you work out there?
So mostly I work between All Pro Wrestling and Memphis Wrestling, but I've been asked to work for MCW, which is in Osceola, Arkansas, and then I've worked for MACW and Tuckerman quite a few times.
It's Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, is it?
Is
that Mid-Atlantic? Yeah, okay. I know that one.
But then I've bounced around quite a few places. In my first year, I worked in 5 states. So I worked Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida. So anywhere in that general vicinity is where I'm at a lot of the time.
What's your goal for coming up? Like, do you plan on obviously every year? And I know this from working with certain guys in the up here.
Yeah.
It's that they've worked so many states in a year, and now it's
Mhm.
their goal to add this many more. So what's coming up this year? Do you plan on getting out there to more states? I mean, we're still about half the year.
Yeah, of course I want to work in more states. I'm actually working on getting on in Texas soon, which would be
Nice.
really awesome.
Yeah.
I don't really care where I work as long as I can kind of get my name out there more, because the more I can get my name out there, the more I can get booked, the more I can get paid. I really just want to get to a place where I can feed my children off of just this. Like, I don't want to have a shoot job and then, be in the ring on the weekends or whatever. So whenever I can get to a point where I can just wrestle full time, that's the goal. And if I got to hit all 50 states before I do it, I'll do that too.
I just want to throw out some names, and if you can give me your opinion. Obviously, we talked about a couple of them briefly while discussing the matches, but other talented, what do you think of these people? Yada, yada, all that stuff. Mackenzie Morgan, obviously your former bestie, and she's quite the performer as well.
I can never take away her in-ring ability. She, from the jump, because her first match was with me in October. She hasn't even been doing this a year. She is phenomenal.
Wow.
I will forever respect her as a competitor in the ring. Whether or not we're the best of friends or enemies, I could never be like, oh no, she can't wrestle, because that would be a full-blown lie.
Another one that was mentioned earlier, Cassandra Golden, excuse me.
It's kind of funny because I was a fan of hers before I met her.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my very first day at Memphis Wrestling, I worked her. So I get there and they're like, yeah, you're going to be wrestling Cassandra Golden. And I was like, oh, the Cassandra Golden? The golden one? So yeah, now we're enemies, which sucks. But as an in-ring competitor, she's just like Morgan. Like, I could never take away from what she does in the ring, because she's a powerhouse for sure.
You also had a couple matches. You had one with, I don't want to pronounce the name wrong. Was it Shalance?
Shalance Royale. That girl there.
Yeah.
She is small, but when I say she packs a punch, Jesus be offense. That girl is strong. That girl is strong. Her discus forearm will knock your chest off. Like, this whole area is just gone.
Wow.
She's strong. And then the singing that she does, like when she sings in your ear, she could bust your eardrum for sure. It legit hurts.
What about Jennifer Justice?
Oh, that lady. Oh, she's beat me up on several occasions. She's something else. Her heel work is phenomenal. She can definitely get you to hate her in the ring. But I like her because she's a safe worker.
Right.
when you work so many people, sometimes you'll come across people that aren't exactly safe in the ring. But I've never had that issue with her. She's definitely somebody that I don't feel like she's going to kill me when we're in the ring together.
One of the things I like about Memphis is that they bring in either some legends or guys, pretty popular guys, like Lindsay Dorado was recently there. And I thought the match he had on TV was just amazing. Literally, I'm trying to remember who he wrestled, but it was awesome. But one of the guys that obviously came across a picture you got with the legendary Jerry F. and Lynn. What was it like? I met Jerry about 25 years ago. I thought he was an awesome dude. So
yeah. So I was actually in the lobby of the Memphis Wrestle Center before the show, and I had just gotten done getting ready. And I had my my championship was on the table, so I picked it up. And then this guy walks past, and I wasn't paying attention. And Dustin turns around, and he's like, "Oh yeah, so this is our women's champion, Nyxx. She put her belt on for you." And when I look, it's Jerry Lynn, and I'm like, "Oh my god!" So I'm trying not to mark out because this is Jerry freaking Lynn. Like, this guy is like crazy. So stop, relax. Okay. So I was about to take promo pictures with my belt, and he's like, "Hey, can I get a picture with you?" And I'm like, "Yo, you're Jerry Lynn." Yeah. What do you mean? Of course you can. So all of my friends that know me wrestling wise, I always said that I wanted the Triple H point growing up, which is like the picture where Triple H is pointing at you and it's like this guy's a big deal, right?
Right.
So when I take the picture with Jerry, I didn't realize what was happening until I saw the picture and he was pointing at me. And I was like, dude, I got the Jerry Lynn point. Like, I'm a big deal. I'm famous. I should be a household name. Ask for my autograph. The price just went up, right? Yeah. So that moment for me was huge. It was so big because being recognized by somebody that I grew up watching was just crazy. And then he had a seminar later that night that I went to. So we got to like sit down and talk to him. We did little 5-minute matches and he would critique it and stuff like that. So that whole day was just phenomenal.
That's awesome. That's really great. Yeah, like I said, I met him once many years ago at a ECW pay-per-view, and he was just the nicest guy you can meet. Seriously.
Of course. Yeah. For sure.
So obviously Dustin Starr is the owner and promoter for Memphis Wrestling, and what's it like working for him? I think this guy has done an amazing job bringing Memphis Wrestling back.
Dustin puts in a lot of work to make sure that we put out the best product possible.
Yeah.
Every time I see Dustin, he's moving, and he's doing something, and he's working on bringing somebody else in. He's planning for the next TV taping or the next event that we have or the next fundraiser. So I feel like he puts a lot of time and effort into making sure that Memphis Wrestling is being built back up, because it kind of went stale for a while.
It did for
a while, and he's trying to make sure that it's not only coming back as good as it was before, but he's trying to do something different so that he could potentially make it better for like the next generation of Memphis Wrestling. Stop. Sorry, my dog is making a guest appearance. I guess he wants to, he wants to be famous too. Relax, my guy. Relax.
It's quite all right.
I live with you.
He's excited you're home. So.
Yeah.
So, what else do you have? What else do you have coming up? Any appearances and all that stuff?
I don't have, as far as I know, I don't have any appearances that I know of. But I've been backstage at some WWE shows recently, and I'm hoping that can be a more recurring thing. We'll see how that goes, because right now is definitely the hardest possible time to get into the WWE.
Yeah.
They're hiring a lot of college athletes, and I am far past my college athlete days.
It's a very strange machine, the WWE. They've always they'll change it every 6 months, it seems. So what I got to say about that is hang in there. And don't stop trying, because they'll announce that they're only hiring this, and then 6 months later they're like, oh, we're looking at the best indie talent out there, kind of a thing. So
Gabe Sapolsky, he does all the bookings for the extras for the WWE. He came and did a seminar. What was it, last month before last? And one of the things that he said to us during the seminar kind of resonated with me. He said that everything in this business is at this moment, which means like at the moment, this is what we need at this moment. And the business, whatever the moment is, always changes, because this business always changes. So that's what, because I think every indie wrestler has been through it where, they get kind of discouraged. Like, oh man, I thought this was going to be it. I thought this was going to be my moment or whatever. But because the moment always changes, any moment could be your moment. You just have to keep sticking with it until your moment happens, Right. So that's been my headspace for that.
All right.
And I've only been doing this a year and a half, so anything can happen,
No, I mean,
I still got a few good years left in me. No.
Absolutely. Like I said, you said you started out late at 27. I know somebody that I was talking to that started out later than that, way later, 29. And then I was talking to a friend of mine that in the business that I became friends with over the last few years. He didn't start until he was about 40 something years old. He decided to do it. So, it's nothing. Keep trying out there. So you're doing good. So, and I mean, obviously, and you've made your mark, obviously, in the 2 groups where you hold titles.
Mm-hmm.
So you're doing pretty good.
Hi, this is Bob Smith. You might remember me from my years at Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine. Well, now I've started a brand new podcast called The Outdated Wrestling Hour. Yes, we're going to take a whimsical look back at the wrestling figures, stars, and trends from years gone by. We're talking 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and a whole lot more. There's going to be laughs. There's going to be fun. There's going to be action. You name it. Please tune in for The Outdated Wrestling Hour wherever you get your podcasts.
Available on all streaming platforms. It's professional wrestling's greatest, largest, privately owned wrestling library. All the classic hits, flips, slams, and pins of yesteryear are on one place. It's Ultimate Classic Wrestling. Check out the Nature Boy Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Mr. USA Tony Atlas, Tito Santana, Rick Martel, a who's who of professional wrestling's greatest spotlight stars ever to grace the squared circle, all in one place. Grab the best seat in the house for memories and mayhem on Ultimate Classic Wrestling.
Why don't you tell everybody where they could find you?
You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of them at Nyxx The Goddess, NYXXTHEGODDESS. I don't use my Snapchat that often, so you can add me there, but you won't see anything, just being honest. I spend most of my time on either TikTok, Twitter, or Instagram. So those 3 mostly. Yeah, I'm pretty much everywhere. You'll see me hopefully on your TV screens soon outside of Memphis Wrestling, because, you know, your girl is a TV star in Memphis. But yeah, all of my social medias are in my link tree on my Instagram. So all you have to do is go to that one page, click the link tree, and you can follow me on everything. One-stop shop.
Yep. I'll actually put some of the links down in this episode description. So make sure you go click that link, like, subscribe, share, follow, and go check out Memphis Wrestling and Nyxx. You'll enjoy what you see, I promise. Nyxx, I want to thank you so much for joining me today and taking the time out of your day. Thank you
for having me. It's been an honor.
I would love to do this again sometime down the road.
Please, and I promise, I swear I will make sure my internet works the entire time I'm on here next time.
Thank you.
Isn't that right? Thank you.